The email arrived at 4:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Subject line, immediate termination, effective today. No phone call, no meeting, no humanity. Just 12 cold words that detonated my entire world while I sat in my apartment, still wearing the same hoodie I'd been living in for 3 days, surrounded by tissues and the kind of darkness that has nothing to do with whether the lights are on. I remember staring at those words until they blurred. Immediate, termination, effective, today. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Not because I was shocked, though I was, but because somewhere deep in the fractured parts of my brain that depression had been gnawing on for months, a tiny voice whispered, of course this is how it ends. You're not good enough. You never were. But here's the thing about rock bottom. Sometimes when you hit it hard enough, you don't just break. Sometimes you bounce. And when I bounced, I didn't just land on my feet. I landed on a launch pad that would rocket me so far past my old life that 6 months later my former boss, the man who fired me for being too depressed to be professional, would be sitting across from his boss, stammering through an explanation of why the company had just lost their 3 biggest clients, why their reputation was circling the drain, and why the entire executive team was now begging me, the woman he'd discarded like a broken pencil, to come back and save them. Spoiler alert, I didn't. But what I did do was so much better. This is the story of how I turned the worst day of my life into the best revenge I never knew I needed. And trust me, you're going to want to hear every single word. My name is Sarah, and 6 months before that email, I was living what looked like a dream life on paper. 29 years old, senior project manager at Hartfield & Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Seattle. 6-figure salary, corner office with a view of the Sound, the kind of business cards that made my parents brag at dinner parties. On paper, I was killing it. In reality, I was dying inside. It started small, the way these things always do, trouble sleeping, then trouble waking up, then trouble remembering why waking up mattered at all. My boyfriend of 4 years had left me 8 months earlier for someone more fun, less intense. His words burned into my memory like a brand. My best friend from college had moved to London. My grandmother, the woman who raised me when my own mother couldn't, had passed away that spring. And I was alone, completely, crushingly alone. Depression doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It seeps in through the cracks in your foundation, silent and patient, until one day you wake up and realize you're drowning in your own bed. But I kept going to work, every single day. Because that's what you do, right? You compartmentalize, you perform, you plaster on the smile and pretend the world isn't imploding behind your eyes. I delivered every project on time. I managed my team of 6 with the same standards I always had. I showed up to meetings, sent emails, hit deadlines. But I wasn't sparkling anymore. I wasn't staying late to chat about weekend plans. I wasn't volunteering for extra assignments. I wasn't performing joy, and apparently that was unforgivable. If you've ever been kicked while you were down, if you've ever had someone weaponize your pain against you, or if you just love watching karma serve justice with a side of poetic irony, you're in the right place. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and buckle up. Because this revenge is chef's kiss level satisfying. Now, back to how it all fell apart. My boss's name was Richard Crane, but everyone called him Rick the Dick behind his back, a nickname he'd earned through years of small cruelties, casual misogyny, and the kind of management style that confused intimidation with leadership. Rick was 47, perpetually tanned from weekend golf trips and obsessed with optics. Not results, not innovation, not people. Optics, how things looked, and apparently I had started to look like a problem. The first comment came during a team meeting in late September. I delivered a presentation on our Q4 campaign strategy, solid work, thorough research, clear ROI projections. But halfway through, I stumbled over a sentence, just once. A tiny verbal fumble that literally no one noticed, except Rick. After the meeting, he pulled me aside in the hallway, too close, invading my space in that way men do when they want you to feel small. "You seem off lately," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Everything okay?" I should have lied. I should have smiled and said I'm great and walked away. But I was so tired of pretending, so I told him the truth, a version of it anyway. "I've been dealing with some personal stuff," I said carefully, "but it's not affecting my work. Everything's on track." He nodded slowly, like a therapist in a bad TV drama. "Just make sure it stays that way," he said. "We need you at your best here, Sarah, not whatever this is." Whatever this is. Like my grief was a fashion choice. Like my depression was an accessory I could just remove before entering the building. I should have reported him to HR right then, but I didn't, because I still believed, naively, stupidly, that my work would speak for itself. October bled into November, and Rick's comments became a pattern. In meetings, he'd interrupt me mid-sentence to ask if I'd had my coffee yet, or if I needed a minute. He started CCing himself on all my emails, just to keep tabs. He moved my one-on-ones from his office to conference rooms, transparent walls, maximum visibility, so everyone could see him managing my performance. And then came the worst part. He started cutting me out. Important client calls I'd normally lead, suddenly reassigned. Strategy sessions I'd pioneered. "We'll handle this one without you, Sarah. You seem overwhelmed." My team started looking at me differently, with pity, with confusion, with the subtle distance people create when they sense someone's drowning and they don't want to get pulled under. I tried to fight back. I worked harder, earlier mornings, later nights, flawless deliverables. I documented everything, every success, every metric, every piece of positive client feedback, but Rick had already decided my narrative, and nothing I did could rewrite it. The breaking point came in early December. I had a panic attack in the bathroom during lunch. Nothing dramatic, no screaming, no collapse. Just 20 minutes locked in a stall, chest tight, breath shallow, tears streaming silently while I tried to pull myself back together. When I finally emerged, my assistant, Maya, sweet 23-year-old Maya, who I'd mentored since she started, was waiting by the sinks. "Sarah," she whispered, concern flooding her face. "Are you okay? Should I get someone?" "I'm fine," I lied, washing my hands with shaking fingers. "Just a migraine." She didn't believe me, and apparently she told Rick. Because the next morning I was called into his office. No warning, no email, just his assistant appearing at my desk like a funeral director. "Rick needs to see you, now." HR was already in the room when I arrived. Linda Chen, head of human resources, sat beside Rick with a folder in her lap and an expression of practiced neutrality that told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a conversation, it was an execution. "Sit down, Sarah," Rick said, not looking at me. I sat. Linda opened the folder, slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. "We're letting you go," she said simply, "effective immediately." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" My voice came out strangled, small. "Why?" Rick leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled like some kind of budget villain. "Your performance has declined significantly over the past few months," he said, each word carefully chosen, legally vetted. "Multiple team members have expressed concerns about your emotional state. We feel it's in everyone's best interest to part ways." "My performance," I started, but he cut me off. "Is documented," he said coldly. "You've been disengaged, uncommunicative, and frankly, Sarah, your personal issues are affecting the team dynamic. We can't have that kind of energy in this environment." Energy. He made my depression sound like a contagious disease. "This is illegal," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if it was. "You can't fire someone for—" "We're not firing you for anything," Linda interrupted smoothly. This is a performance-based termination. Washington is an at-will state. We're offering 2 weeks severance as a courtesy. 2 weeks for 5 years of 60-hour work weeks, sacrificed weekends, and loyalty that had apparently meant nothing. I looked at Rick, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that was worse than cruelty. Indifference. I was a problem solved, a box checked, a liability removed. I didn't cry, not in that office. I stood up, legs numb, and walked out with whatever dignity I could scrape together. I cleaned out my desk in 15 minutes while my former team avoided eye contact. And I left Hartfield & Associates through the back stairwell because I couldn't face the elevator doors closing on the life I'd built. That email came later, 4:47 p.m., while I sat in my apartment staring at the wall. The official termination notice, cold, corporate, final. And that's when I broke, not gently, not quietly. I sobbed until my throat was raw and my chest ached, and I couldn't tell where the grief ended and the rage began. Because this wasn't just about losing a job. It was about being punished for being human, for having the audacity to struggle, for not performing happiness convincingly enough to make comfortable people comfortable. I spent 3 days in bed after that, didn't shower, didn't eat, didn't answer calls. I let the darkness swallow me whole because, honestly, what was the point anymore? But on day 4, something shifted. I was scrolling through LinkedIn, torturing myself by watching former colleagues post about their amazing team and exciting new projects. When I saw it, a job posting from a former client of mine, Technova Solutions, looking for a senior marketing strategist. And suddenly, through the fog, a thought crystallized. Rick had made one catastrophic mistake. He'd assumed that my value was tied to Hartfield & Associates. He'd assumed that without his company, I was nothing. But here's what he didn't know. Every major client success Hartfield had celebrated in the past 3 years. I had architected it. Every relationship that brought in 7-figure contracts, I had built it. The company's reputation wasn't Rick's, it was mine, and I was about to prove it. I didn't apply to that Technova posting. I did something better. I called Marcus Chen, Technova's CEO, directly. Marcus and I had worked together on a product launch 2 years earlier, a campaign that had tripled their market visibility and directly led to a $15 million funding round. We'd stayed in touch, professional respect, occasional coffee, the kind of connection that Rick had always taken credit for but never actually built himself. "Sarah," Marcus answered on the second ring, "I was just thinking about you. How are things at Hartfield?" I took a breath, and I made a choice. "I'm no longer with Hartfield," I said evenly, "and I'm available for new opportunities." There was a pause. "Wait, seriously, what happened?" I could have lied, could have spun some diplomatic exit story, but I was done pretending. "I was fired," I said simply, "for being depressed." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "That's disgusting," and their loss. "Sarah, I've been trying to hire someone with your strategic mind for 6 months. Are you interested in consulting?" Consulting, not employment, not a new cage, freedom. "Tell me more," I said, sitting up straighter for the first time in days. By the end of that week, I had a consulting contract with Technova. By the end of the month, I had 3 more clients, all former contacts who'd worked with me at Hartfield and had always known who the real talent was. And by the end of January, I'd officially launched my own marketing strategy consultancy, Hartwell Strategic Solutions. Named after my grandmother, Alice Hartwell, the woman who taught me that grace and strength aren't opposites, and that sometimes the best revenge is becoming exactly who you were meant to be all along. I didn't advertise. I didn't need to. Word spread quickly in Seattle's tight-knit business community. Sarah was available. Sarah was brilliant. Sarah was everything Hartfield had lost and didn't deserve. Within 3 months, I was making double my old salary, working from home in my pajamas if I wanted to, taking on only projects that excited me, and, most importantly, healing. I started therapy. I found a medication that helped. I rebuilt my life on my own terms, brick by brick, with the same strategic planning I'd once used to build other people's empires. And then, the universe delivered the pièce de résistance. It started with a phone call in late March. Unknown number, Seattle area code. "Is this Sarah Hartwell?" A woman's voice, professional but urgent. Speaking. "My name is Jennifer Wu. I'm on the board of directors at Hartfield & Associates. I was wondering if you might have time to meet for coffee." My heart stopped. "I'm sorry," I said carefully. "Did you say Hartfield?" I did, and I know this might seem unusual, but we're in a difficult situation, and your name keeps coming up as someone who might be able to help. I almost laughed. Almost. "What kind of situation?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Jennifer sighed, the sound of someone at the end of their rope. "3 of our largest clients have left in the past 6 weeks, she said bluntly. "Our reputation has taken a significant hit. And frankly, Miss Hartwell, we're trying to understand what went wrong and how to fix it." Oh, this was delicious. "I see," I said slowly. "And why do you think I can help?" "Because," Jennifer said, and I could hear her choosing her words carefully. "Every exit interview mentioned you by name. Every single one. They said they stayed with Hartfield because of you, and when they learned you were gone, they started reconsidering their contracts." I closed my eyes and let that information wash over me like warm rain. Technova had left Hartfield. Meridian Corp had left Hartfield. Silverline Industries, the company whose $3 million annual contract I had negotiated and managed, had left Hartfield. All because of me. Not because I'd poached them, I hadn't. Not because I'd badmouthed the company, I hadn't. But because when clients work with someone who genuinely cares about their success, who understands their brand, who treats them like partners instead of line items, they notice when that person disappears, and they wonder why. "Ms. Wu," I said carefully, "I appreciate you reaching out, but I'm not sure how I can help with your internal problems." "We'd like to offer you a consulting contract," she said quickly, "to help us rebuild these client relationships and restore our reputation. Name your rate. Seriously, whatever you want." I let the silence stretch. Let her sit with it. Let the desperation ferment. "I'll think about it," I finally said. "Can you send me the details in writing?" "Of course. Thank you, Sarah. Really, thank you." After we hung up, I sat there for a long moment, phone in hand, a smile slowly spreading across my face. Then I called my lawyer. The email from Jennifer arrived an hour later. Attached was a proposal outlining a 6-month consulting contract at $15,000 per month, plus expenses, to provide strategic guidance for client retention and reputation management. I forwarded it to my lawyer with a simple note. "Thoughts?" Her response came back in minutes. "Negotiate higher. You have all the leverage. Also, I love everything about this." So I did. I sent back a counter-proposal, $25,000 per month retainer, 6-month minimum commitment, full autonomy over strategy, direct reporting to the board, not to Rick Crane. And one additional clause, a formal written acknowledgement from Hartfield & Associates that Sarah Hartwell's prior termination was unjustified and not performance-based. I didn't expect them to agree to that last part, but I wanted to watch them squirm. Jennifer called me the next morning. "We accept all your terms," she said, slightly breathless, "including the acknowledgement. Our legal team is drafting it now." I actually had to mute myself so she wouldn't hear my shocked laughter. "I'm glad we could reach an agreement," I said professionally. "When would you like me to start?" "As soon as possible. And Sarah, there's one more thing." "Yes?" Richard Crane has been placed on administrative leave, pending a full review of his management practices. Several complaints have come to light since your departure. The board wants you to know that he won't be involved in any aspect of your work here. I closed my eyes. Administrative leave. Translation. They were building a case to fire him, and I hadn't even had to lift a finger. I appreciate you telling me, I said calmly, though my heart was doing backflips. We're very sorry, Sarah, for everything. My first day back at Hartfield & Associates was a Tuesday in mid-April, 6 months almost to the day since I'd been fired. But this time I walked through the front doors as a consultant, billing more in a month than I used to make in 3. This time I had a reserved parking spot, an executive-level guest office, and a contract that made me accountable to no one but the board. This time I held all the power. The office was exactly as I'd left it. Same grey carpets, same glass conference rooms, same corporate art that tried too hard to look creative. But everything else had changed. My former team, the people who'd avoided eye contact when I was terminated, now couldn't stop staring as I walked through the halls with Jennifer. Maya, my old assistant, actually teared up when she saw me. "Sarah," she whispered as we passed. "You're back." I gave her a small smile. "Just visiting," I said kindly. "How are you, Maya?" "Better now," she said, and the relief in her voice told me everything I needed to know about what Rick's management style had done in my absence. The board meeting started at 10 a.m. 6 board members sat around the mahogany table, Jennifer, 2 other women, 3 men, all looking at me like I was the Messiah come to save their sinking ship. And in the corner, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him, was Rick. He wasn't on administrative leave anymore. He'd been demoted. From Executive Director of Operations to Senior Account Manager, a title 3 levels below where he'd been, managing a team of 2 instead of 30. He had to sit in on this meeting because technically he was still staff. But he had no voice here, no power, no optics to manage. When his eyes met mine, I saw everything: shock, humiliation, rage, fear. I smiled at him, not gloating, not cruel, just serene. The smile of someone who'd already won and didn't need him to acknowledge it. Jennifer opened the meeting. "Thank you all for being here. As you know, we've brought Sarah Hartwell on as a consultant to help us navigate our current challenges. Sarah, the floor is yours." I stood up, opened my laptop, and pulled up the presentation I'd prepared. "Thank you, Jennifer. Before we dive into strategy, I want to address something fundamental. Hartfield & Associates doesn't have a client problem. You have a culture problem." The room went silent. I clicked to the next slide, a chart showing client retention rates over the past 3 years. "Your retention was at 94% when I was here. In the 6 months since my departure, it's dropped to 68%. That's not a coincidence. That's a symptom." Another slide, anonymous quotes from former clients. "We stayed because Sarah understood our vision. When Sarah left, we lost faith in the agency's commitment. No one could replace her strategic insight. I let them sit with that. Your clients didn't leave because of price or competition," I continued. "They left because they lost trust. And they lost trust because the person who built those relationships was removed. Without explanation, without transition, without respect for the years of work she'd invested." I looked directly at Rick. His face was red, his jaw clenched, but he couldn't say a damn word. "So here's my recommendation," I said, turning back to the board. "If you want to rebuild your reputation, you need to rebuild your culture. You need leadership that values people over optics. You need to address why talented employees are leaving, why morale is low, and why your management practices drive away the very people who make this company successful." Jennifer was nodding. The other board members were taking notes, and Rick looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "I'll work with you for 6 months, I concluded. "I'll help you win back clients, restructure your processes, and train your teams. But I can't fix a culture that punishes vulnerability and rewards cruelty. That's on you. I closed my laptop. Any questions? After the meeting, Jennifer walked me to my temporary office. That was incredible, she said quietly. Thank you for being direct. I'm not here to make people comfortable, I replied. I'm here to fix what's broken. She nodded, then hesitated. For what it's worth, Rick's not going to last much longer. The review uncovered some serious issues: harassment complaints, discriminatory comments, hostile work environment claims. He'll probably be gone by summer. Good, I said simply, because it was. Over the next 4 months, I worked my arse off. I met with every former client personally, rebuilt trust, renegotiated contracts. I trained the existing team on relationship management, strategic thinking, and, most importantly, empathy. I helped them hire a new executive director who actually gave a damn about people. And I watched Rick Crane fade into irrelevance until one day in August, he quietly submitted his resignation and disappeared from the company he'd once ruled. No one missed him. By September, Hartfield and Associates had recovered 3 of their 4 lost clients and signed 2 new ones. Their reputation was slowly rebuilding. Their culture was shifting, not perfect, but better. And my 6-month contract was complete. On my last day, the board offered me a permanent position: Executive Vice President of Strategy, Corner Office, Stock Options, the works. I thanked them, and I said no. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Revenge isn't about destruction. Real revenge, the kind that actually heals you, is about becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so completely at peace with who you are that the people who tried to break you become irrelevant. Rick didn't get destroyed because I sought vengeance. He destroyed himself because cruelty always eats itself eventually. I just happened to be successful enough, visible enough, and valuable enough that his collapse became obvious. My depression didn't make me weak, it made me human. And the companies that understood that, the clients who valued me, the people who supported me, they're the ones I still work with today. My consultancy is thriving. I work with incredible humans on projects that matter. I make my own hours, set my own boundaries, and never ever apologize for having feelings. And Rick, last I heard he's working for a small firm in Spokane. No teams to manage, no power to abuse, just a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake cruelty for leadership. So that's my story. The story of how getting fired for being too depressed became the catalyst for building a life I actually love. If this resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated or pushed out for being human, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. What's the most satisfying comeback you've ever witnessed or experienced yourself? And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We've got more stories about justice, karma, and people who refuse to stay down. Thanks for listening. And remember, your worst moment doesn't define you. What you build after it does. See you in the next one.